The lands of Calradia are vast and often beautiful, but not all of it is fertile and rich enough to support human life. Much of the land is scorching and torturous desert or frozen wastelands, barely suitable for farming. For hundreds of years, the people of Calradia have found pockets of isolated land, highly suited for habitation, and on that land, over those centuries, these people formed clans that eventually became kingdoms. These kingdoms eventually spawned cities of great wealth and power, and with that lust for wealth and power came war. Now for centuries, war has crisscrossed the lands as factions and kingdoms fought a seemingly never-ending battle to conquer and hold that ultimate power. The Aserai in particular were war-ravaged, having enemies on both of their frontiers. Not that any of this warfare and carnage troubled our hero Wazu. Hafiz Wazu, crowned as a noble of the Aserai, held Danustica, and enormous hordes of wealth, but more importantly, lots of food. Despite repeated calls to arms by his advisors and commanders, and even the Sultan Unqid himself, Wazu was content. And when you are over 7 feet tall and can kill people with your fists, no one makes you do anything in this world. And so, Wazu didn't. Alright friends, welcome back again to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment. Our YouTube channel is dedicated to all things Bannerlord related, and at this moment, this Aserai campaign. But this episode is going to be dedicated to something wholly different. In fact, this is going to be a very unusual episode for this campaign. That's why I tried to make it clear in the video title. We're going to be covering first and foremost an advance of this campaign. The long mentioned fast forward, right? We're going to essentially zoom 15 to 20 years into the future so that Wazu is an old man and his children come of age. It's a little bit like that scene in Interstellar, right? Where all of a sudden he's getting video mail from his 29-year-old daughter and stuff like that. We're going to go through and I'm going to highlight some of that process, how we're doing it, and how it's affecting the world, right? I will give you a few snapshots of what's happening and then of course catch you up to the latest time year, whatever it ends up being. I'm not quite certain what year I will fast forward to. All right, so the other process we're doing here, and this has been requested a lot, is we are going to be covering the mods and the settings of this campaign so that you fellows out there can recreate this campaign in your own game, right? Minus all the profanity, or maybe hopefully you guys are out there swearing just as much as me. If so, right on, man. Just have a blast. Now, this episode, this first 5 or 6 minutes is going to give you essentially the keys to go out and download these same mods, or the mods of your choosing, add the settings you want and whatnot, and make this kind of a campaign, right? There's not a whole lot of magic here, but there are conflicts across various different mods, right? Some mods don't work with certain versions and whatnot. I have a nice happy balance of mods. I'm going to be running about 15 mods for this campaign, so let's go ahead and get started. Now I'm on a Steam page here. Of course, I'm doing this so that you can see all the different mods. We're just going to click play here and it's going to bring up the Bannerlord, the main Bannerlord intro app. And then I click mods up here, right? Now you see it says patch notes. Ignore that. I'm actually at 1.28 My eyes are bad. 1.2831530. Now what I'm going to be doing here is essentially, it's still kind of hard for me to see. There we go. What I'm going to be essentially be doing is showing you the mods that I may use, right? Like this realistic battle mod I use from time to time. We are going to use it in the campaign, just like the battle size mod, right? If you want to know more about these mods, of course, you want to do that research for yourself. I don't want this to be 25 minutes. Obviously, the battle size mod is nice, though, for an epic campaign because you get gigantic battles. The death for all, I'm going to show you directly the config, I guess is how you would say it, for this mod, right? You go into the actual module, open it with a notepad or any kind of editable device, and then the vanilla default rate is 50. What we're going to do is set it at 25. If you set this too low, nobles, including your own, including your main character, will be dying left and right. So if you set it at like 1 or something like that, between those little brackets, you will have massive death in your campaign. I'm going to go with 25, but I reserve the right to change that down the road, right? And that's one of the few settings I'm going to be changing on my campaign. The rest will be fixed, and I'll explain the rest, more of that in a second. So this is a cool mod, less damage. If you want just less damage and slower battles, check that one out. Powerful heroes. I will be showing you the config for this once we start the game. The RTS camera, of course, is essential. So is immersive battlefields where the troops are yelling and shit. It's a really cool mod. And again, version 1.2831530. I can see it a little bit better now. Reinforcement system I'm not going to use. I don't find it consistently to work well, even though it's a really cool concept. Random bodies, of course, is purely aesthetics, but boy, is that important, right? You get all kinds of different looking troops. Some are huge, some are short, some have beards, some have mustaches, some have bowl haircuts. The time pass mod is vital to me because this changes time during the battle. And speaking of vital, right, this dismemberment mod, I don't know how you can have medieval battle without arms and limbs being hacked off, and this dismemberment mod does a magnificent job for it. I will highlight some of the settings for that once we get in game. So, of course, you can always rewind if you didn't catch the version numbers, but the main thing I'm trying to do here is tell you the mods we're using and showing you the versions. Perfect fire arrows, that's an automatic one, right? You want that if you can load it. It makes for dramatic battles. Realistic weather, ditto, right? It makes for sandstorms, all kinds of stuff like that. Of course, the strength and AI mod I will talk more about once we get in game. The camel armor and improved camels and larger camel I definitely want to do for an Aserai campaign. Makes them a little bit better. The better time is essential to move the game forward, and I'll be talking about that in the episode. And then, yes, we are going to have custom banners, which is something that I don't know if I'll make an episode about, but I like that. I don't get the player settlements to consistently work, so we're not using that. Not to mention it's sort of an advantage for the player. We don't want any advantages. And then the last one is just aesthetics with the taverns, right? There's more variety to the various different taverns in the game. I like that option. All right, let's go ahead and start this now. All right, so we're on the main page here, and you go to mod options. If you have all those loaded in the correct order, this is how it should look. And we can edit some stuff here, right? This is a critical component of it. So dismemberment plus, a lot of people ask about this. I'm just going to cruise through these settings in 10 seconds. I like to have lots of head dismemberments and not too much slow-mo, right? You don't want a massive amount of slow-mo, but it's nice to have a little occasional slow-mo shot for that cinematic. Now, powerful hero, we're only using this for one purpose, and that's to give enemy heroes, notice we're not using the player or ally heroes, just the enemy heroes, 250% of their normal health. That means that our enemy lords that we're fighting are going to be beasts. They're going to have to be pounded with weapons before they die, right? And I think this is a really good part for a very difficult Bannerlord campaign. Realistic weather, I'm not really going to bother showing you that. You can adjust all those settings. This one, though, is the critical one. Strength and AI. This is the ability for us to change everything from the amount of nobles and recruits they get to how much money the troops get, or how much money the lords get, rather, how much EXP the troops get, how much militia show up in the towns, right? These are all kinds of settings you can configure, and this is what I have decided after some thorough testing to use for this fast forward process here, right? We're going to fast forward 15 or 20 years, and that whole time these mods are going to be affecting them. Now, you could go crazy with these things, but I don't think that's a good idea. You will end up with really strange artifacts in game. These settings here are what I would recommend if you've never used this before. Now, incidentally, these are going to be fixed for me. I'm not going to go if the game's too easy and just go like that. And then, oh shit, if I'm losing, I'm just going to take these to 0. I'm going to leave these fixed at 5 and 2 for the entire campaign. I've already tested this and it works pretty well. Enemies have large forces. They're able to maintain their forces. The enemy lords are leveling. The towns are getting bigger with this grain and the prosperity and stuff like that. It makes for quite the setting so that Wazu and company will have a brutal, mature kingdom when he I was going to say comes of age, when he hits, 50 something years old, after we do a little fast forward. All right, so those ground rules in hand. Now you know what mods we're using. Now it's time to fast forward this campaign, right? We're going to take all those mods, the strengthen AI mod and whatnot, and we are going to fast forward. Now, of course, anytime you're going to fast forward, you're going to want to have a nice garrison. You're going to want to have a nice troops and food and stuff like that. In fact, just in case this is going to be near the start of the episode, I better say welcome back again to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment's Aserai campaign. We are about to begin the fast forward process. You can call this a hibernation process, where we are going to use the better time mod to blaze ahead here. Now, of course, Wazu is about to retire, right? This guy's had a fairly illustrious, if relatively short career, advancing from a busboy at the Sandy Crotch. He is now a warlord with 500 troops in his army. These are both companion armies we have here, and we've carved out almost a little sort of a crescent shaped little area here with this terrible flag. In fact, let's change this. Let's make this a little bit more culturally appropriate. We stick a moon or something. Here we go. Yeah, that looks good. That looks even better. So there. Now that's our current banner. We're going to use that for a bit here, and Wazu's going to go to sleep. Now I better, let's see, how would we want to do this? Let me show you Arwa first. This is my wife. She is pregnant. She's been extraordinarily amazing for us in every single way. We already have one male and we have 2 female babies. So, of course, we're hoping another male comes. You obviously need males to marry off to wives and add to your clan later on. Now, what we're doing with Wazu here is loading him up with grain. We're going to, he's basically going to have a bunch of food, a bunch of troops, and we're going to leave him at Danustica for a while. Let me turn this volume up just a bit so you can hear me clicking around. So we're going to leave him at Danustica, and we're just going to fast forward the map, right? We're going to see what happens here. Just a status check right now. We're at war. They just declared war. Unquid just declared war on the Northern Empire, which is strange, right? These dipshits are way up there in the north. They've taken Myzia. They even took Lycaron down here. And we're going to see what happens, right? I'm not really going to alter. Actually, I'm not going to alter. Oh, I better explain this too. This army over here with no leader, unfortunately, our scout was killed. It says she disappeared in 1088. Well, she died. So I don't think it says died in combat for companions. It just says she disappeared. So we only have 7 out of 8 right now, but I'm not going to recruit one. We're going to do some companion recruiting after the fast forward here, and I will explain why in a moment. We may even have some companions die of old age. Wazu might die of old age during this process. So we have this little bowl-shaped kingdom with Vostrum and 4 castles. Actually, you know what? We also have, Barry Howe Castle way over here. And again, just a little sort of campaign status check. The Valandians are totally rampaging still. They've taken Sanala, which is one of the richest Aserai cities, Quayaz, Ortesia, and it really does look like a red tide in this episode, or at least in this campaign. Now, who knows how this will change, right? With the fast forward, obviously all kinds of RNG events are happening. Armies are clashing and people are dying in combat with the aforementioned Death for All mod, right? There's going to be higher death rates. In the middle, it's kind of a maelstrom. Sturge is doing pretty good. Valandia is definitely the strongest kingdom. And Botania is almost gone, right? They're down to, 1 city and 3 or 4 castles there. So I'm not going to spend hours just on, the little things of this campaign. It feels kind of strange. This is just some artificial world, and I don't want to get too deep into the minutia. But for the people following the campaign that are curious, I'm going to show you this in detail now. This episode, or at least this initial time lapse, will probably be, I might save 15 or 20 minutes of this process. And I got to do a couple things here. I'll show you the food, but eventually what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to give you snapshots of what happened over the course of 15 to 20 years. That's roughly the time I'm planning on fast forwarding to the next stage of this campaign. Now, strap yourselves in for this episode. Actually, you can just take a seat, pull up something nice to drink. This is probably not going to be the most thrilling episode. In fact, there won't be, well, I can't say there will be no battle. There's always a chance we get besieged and have to defend ourselves. But with this city, look at, we've got tons of money here and lots of projects already checked. Of course, Arwa is doing a magnificent job as our governor. Our loyalty is stable. We are going to sit in this city the entire time lapse, unless we're forced out, right, or we're conquered or something like that. And I will just role play with that. If we get captured in the city in a siege, I will leave. At Vostrom, we have this other companion. He's actually a melee dipshit. Look at this dipshit. He's got some combat ability, and ironically, that gives him some plus to loyalty. So he's a governor at the other city we have. And then we have these 5 castles. I can actually... This guy's new. I will talk about him later. He's a healer character, this Thakar, the scholar. You don't really need to know too much about the companions because, like I said, they may die over the course of this fast forward. Now, I'm not going to be showing you each step of this, but I'm going to be sort of role-playing with some of the future heirs to this kingdom, right? These are the 2 oldest children in his young family. They're both girls. So he's got a boy on the way, and that brother, probably the eventual leader of the next clan, because it's a misogynistic world, that male is probably going to lead, despite the fact that the females are older. Now the cash situation, you can see we've got plenty of money, right? We're hemorrhaging money, but we're sitting on a big pile of money, and that's intentional. I have no problem with Wazu being broke. Now this is 4x speed. I'm going to kind of slowly work into the fastest speed. What's the fastest speed? Well, I think with the better time mod, you can do 50 times speed, but in my experience, it's very juddering. The units are moving around like lightning. It's actually kind of hard to see what's going on. So for the sake of your poor brains out there trying to keep track of all these different units flying all over the place, I will use 4x and then 16x. I'm concerned about sitting on too many troops. These are all the troops we have piled up. We've been fighting lots of battles leading up to this, and of course some of it I didn't show you. We've been acquiring prisoners. We've got a good amount of the Beni Zalal, actually. We rescued a couple of their guys, and we obtained some decent troops of those, which is great, because I want some of those units in the army. They're sort of weaker versions of the Aserai Ferris. So it might look weird. I'm intentionally dumping troops here. We want to have troops to defend the city, but not so much that we hemorrhage all our gold away, right? I was doing the math. If it's 3,000 a day, that'll only take 1,000 days to go broke. That'll be faster than 15 years, right? That would be like 10, 12 years, maybe, something like that. So we don't want to be completely broke and have to deal with those ramifications. Not to mention, it's likely that our expenses are going to go up, right? As prosperity goes down and as we lose castles, which is likely to happen, right? This little bowl of defenses here is not going to hold out. Now, the Aserai are out here doing their thing, right? The AI is out there doing their RNG, so they're sieging. It looks like we're being counter-sieged at Myzea, and this current map is likely to change a lot in the next 15 to 20 years, right? The Khazate, okay, we now have peace with the Valandians. That's dumb, even though, I mean, I guess you got to consolidate your gains, but the Valandians have totally taken half our kingdom in the south, and now we give them peace. Just let them sit on their castles and cities that used to be ours. Nevertheless, I digress here. So what I can do is I'm going to sit here. Now, part of the reason I'm going to go slow here at the beginning is because Arwa is expecting, right? We are expecting a baby. If I remember right, she was pregnant about 2 months ago, which is the strange pregnancy time period in Bannerlord. Women give birth like every 5 months. And there we go. Ragged. That's got to be a boy. That's great news. Now we have 2 boys and 2 girls with Arwa. Just to make sure here, don't get surprised later on. You don't want to discover that you've got a girl. And he has a reputation of being considerate to others, right? So that sounds like a future general to me, doesn't it? Right? He's going to be considerate while he raids villages. All right. So what you're seeing now is 4x speed. And all I have to do to speed it up is hold, I'm looking down at the control and the space button, right? And then it's going to be a blur. You see the time lapse there at the bottom? And when I hold this thing down, it's going to be almost like a seizure effect for some people. And I apologize if it bothers you. There it is, right? It's blazing by. The days are just literally going by like every 2 seconds. And I did the math on it. It's still going to take a while, even without interruptions. This looks like it's going to take 3 hours. So of course I'm not gonna stream all that and try to make up interesting commentary for that. I apologize, fellas. A couple guys were like, "You should time lapse the whole thing." Yeah, I don't know, fellas. I'm not sure. First, I want to talk about nonsense for 3 hours. It's also going to be very much back and forth. Anybody who's had a Bannerlord campaign knows that there's just kind of endless, nonstop back and forth war. Although in this campaign, it does, interesting things are happening, and I'm glad for that, right? Valandia is definitely emerging as a major power. I would love it if there was, I don't know, three or four major powers that emerged by the time that Wazu wakes up. Incidentally, that's probably going to be the next episode. So this episode is essentially going to cover the entire process of his time lapse. And of course, how I'm going to do that is some editing. This first year or so, I'm just going to hold down this control and shift button and sort of talk about this, right? The Southern Empire, it's actually interesting. They're moving east or west. They've cut off Valandia. They've cut Valandia in two over there. But I'm definitely not going to narrate each little thing because there's a tremendous amount of back and forth in a Bannerlord campaign. Our Aserai forces are actually doing better than expected, and I'm anticipating getting sieged at some point. It seems probable, and what I'm going to do is just simply auto-resolve, right? If we get... That was Arwa pregnant? Yeah, she is. So our wife is hyper-fertile, right? That'll be our fifth, right? Fifth baby already, and who knows how many there will be. And I'm pretty confident you fellows out there are probably experiencing something similar. Now, we have both of the... whatever they're called, the virile, and a lot of guys have been keen to say it doesn't stack. We shall see, right? I guess this is not going to be definitive, but she's certainly pretty virile so far, and it might be that just one of us is virile, and that's sufficient. But 5 kids, I'm very thrilled with that notion. Of course, she could still get killed in childbirth, and we will just roll with it. Incidentally, if that happens, if either Wazu dies of old age or Arwa dies in childbirth or something like that, I will have a little intermission, so to speak. I will be sure to show you that. I'm actually recording this whole thing. I'm just not going to narrate through the whole thing. You can see we're at war with the Northern Empire, and we're stronger than them. So even this AI has a shot to advance here. Okay, so Cole is the male heir. We're going to make him a beast, right? You guys know how I like to play in a campaign like this. He's going to be a horse-riding, foot prancing, highly athletic beast of a warrior, and we will slowly build up his capacity to lead armies. The women, incidentally, I'm probably going to do a mix. I got a little sheet in front of me here. I'm planning on having some of the women be governors and some of them being warriors, right? I think this is one of the keys to a Bannerlord campaign, is specializing your units so that they're really good at their job, right? We have really good governors, really good leaders of armies and parties, and then, of course, also savage people who swing a violent weapon in the face of the enemy. Now, it's kind of a blur here. I'm also, every once in a while, I'm gonna repop the influence to keep my little army together here. Mostly I'm doing that so Danustica doesn't get blown up by siege. Of course, with those forces in our army, there's like 1,000 guys here in Danustica. I don't think we're going to get sieged for a while. At some point or other, I'm just going to forget, and those armies are going to run off. And what I mean by those armies... okay, we're starting to get impinged here. This is our first castle, I think, that's under siege. We'll see if this Aserai force defends it. Of course not. They're running off. The AI rarely does brilliant things. Whatever you do, don't help me. Unquid's coming over. Undoubtedly, we're going to lose territory, right? We're right on the frontier here with the, Khazate, Southern Empire, potentially even the Western Empire. We're going to lose territory. It's just a question of how many castles and cities we retain. There's always a chance that we don't have any of these cities by the time we come back from this fast forward. I wanted to do this too. This is just for a snapshot. I'm telling myself in the editing process here, I want to put, this guy's the father of Arwa. I want to put the previous image of him before we enacted the strengthen AI mod, right? So I'm telling myself, make sure you superimpose, I think it was the first episode or one of the early episodes, speaking of the the strengthen AI mod. Same thing with Gyarios. I did these two characters, and we're going to sort of observe to see how much this mod makes them better, right? They're already gaining levels. It looks good. So this was lost. And I'm keeping an eye on the feed over on the right, or on the left. I want to see, you know, Calradia died of old age or whatever. Again, we will have a recap. I'm not going to spend 60 minutes talking about the little minutia of the campaign. Gulison clan was eliminated. You know, there's going to be... oh, shit. Well, we are besieged. You motherfuckers, that was fast. We got 1,000 people here, and they're going to siege us? We're going to upgrade everybody here and pound this force. We'll just auto-resolve this, and they'll be destroyed. Stupid fucks. I can recruit some prisoners here. Of course, we have this giant, massive prisoners. You can picture them like in a big, long line outside the Sultan's palace, and they're all like, we want to fight for this guy. We're sick of being in prison forever. And so we'll recruit some of them. It damaged our morale pretty seriously, but that's all right. Okay, so let's see what this Northern Empire attackers abandoned the siege. Never mind. Okay, so we just got peace with the Northern Empire, so that was much ado about nothing. I'm not going to pay much attention to this stuff on the side. We're not going to vote at all. When there's new cities or castles taken, Wazu is going to abstain. He's just going to sit in this castle and eat and probably fuck and do just about nothing, right? He was 7'1" or 7'2" with his shoes on, 370 pounds. He's going to be 600 by the time this episode's over. Save you fellas from a cough there. I've got a little mute button. Apologies if that... I mean, it's probably better than me coughing in your ear. So these perks as well, I'm not going to bother with at all. Some of the companions are still getting skills out there. Like these armies are running around. Eventually, my companions, I'm just going to let them loose. We're losing 3,000 a day, but I think that's very tenable. Ironically, we're winning tournaments. Wazu, of course, can't... Saruk died in battle. That sucks. That's one of the Aserai leaders. Shit like that's going to happen, and we're just going to roll with it. But ironically, Arwa is winning tournaments, right? She's just sitting as the governor of Danustica, and every month or two they have a tournament. She just whips everybody's ass. So we get a little bit of money for that. I think I have like 1 or 2 caravans running around out there. We've got some workshops. So we're hemorrhaging money. Okay, that was the... Arwa's given birth, and that's another male. So Kulharn, we now have 3 boys and 2 girls. So Arwa's been, you know, just an optimal, incredible dream wife for this make-believe world that we're in here. Making children, winning tournaments, superior governor, and I talked about all this. This was mostly premeditated beforehand. We're starting to hemorrhage food. I do have the ability to dump food on the populace. We've got like 15,000 food in the storage. I didn't show you guys, and I have been kind of talking about it, but I've been gathering food for a while in this campaign. And once we acquired Danustica, it was time to start just shoving it wholesale into the castle, into the city. We just got ripped apart there. I didn't even actually see who were at war. Looks like the Southern Empire. So again, you see the 16x speed. These armies are just blazing by, and Reggae is over there. We might get attacked here again. 1, 2, 3. That looked like 3 or 4 Southern Empire armies. And nobody's surprised, right? The Southern Empire is just pushing the shit in here of the Aserai. It just seems like my ally has been mostly inept in this campaign. Fiorad died. Let's just take a look at this and see who we got going on here. Yes, he died in battle at the age of 38. Well, he was an ungrateful fuck. Let's make sure Regea is alive. Yeah, she's still doing her things. 47. Caladog is 44. He's moving right along. And his stats are getting pretty good, right? He starts with like 300 and some stats, but the rest of his stats are catching up too. We're going to get sieged here again. So our food is going down, and that's because these fucks are raiding our village, cutting off our troops. So here's what I can do about that, right? Open the stash, and we can go in here, and I think we have like 20,000 or 18,000, almost 20,000 food. I can shove some more food onto Wazu. You can picture him like Smog and the Hobbit, where he's surrounded by gold. Only with Wazu, it's just bread and rolls and, you know, fish and fucking dates and shit. The guy's just stuffing his face. He looks like that leader from Dune, right? He's just, every time you see him, the bad guy, he's just eating the Harkonnen leader, whatever he's called, Suna, has died in battle. Hopefully there's not so much death that we're losing clans left and right, but I'm going to roll with it, right? We have the Death for All mod going, as I showed again beforehand, and it is going to increase the death. Not massively so, right? We want more death. We just don't want wholesale massacre of nobles in every battle, especially in this time lapse, right? 20 years are going to pass. You have this fucking stupid caravan just having a seizure outside the gates of Danustica. Somebody capture that dipshit. And of course, the Aserai here are stubbing their toe, just getting obliterated here while the finally some cavalry's coming, quite literally. It looks like Razi is under siege. Lavinia Castle's under siege. So it's messy. It's messier than I thought it was going to be at this stage. Of course, Wazu's not helping, right? We've got our companions. They took off. We're going to bring them back here to Danustica because, I don't know, we might get sieged again. And I want, for role-playing sake, I want Wazu to sit in one city this whole time. So we've gone just over a year. Ironically, it started, the time-lapse, I didn't mean it to, but it started almost exactly at the start of the year, like spring 1 or something of 1089. So I will probably do this to about 10... Actually, it might be like 1106, 1107. Whoops, we get an autosave in here, which is fine in case there's a bug or a crash. And I will occasionally do this. I will give you essentially this overhead view. This is 1 year, right? The Northern Empire is doing pretty well. The Sturgeons are doing pretty well. The Britannians they're making a little resurgence there. The Valandians are doing really well, right? They're the strongest kingdom so far. The Southern Empire is doing pretty well, or so-so. And we're just gonna hunker down. You're gonna get these little notes throughout the course of this. And again, I'm not gonna do it yearly. It's just gonna take way too long. But I might do every 5 years. Some guys have said 5 years would be a good thing to do. I'm trying to take the feedback that you guys give me and do the best I can with it. All right, so let's see, what else can we talk about? Wazu. Wazu may die, right? Wazu started this campaign, I think in 1084 or something like that, about 5-6 years ago at the age of 40. That means he's in his mid-40s. Once you hit 50, or maybe it's 45 or something like that, you have a chance of getting sick, basically. It's a little bit unrealistic, but I think, of course, they don't want your main character getting killed instantly of smallpox and shit like that. That was the reality of it, right? We're about 200 years, 300 years from the Great Plague, the Black Plague. It was like 1350, and that killed about half the population of Europe, right? Some areas it was 3/4. Some people say it was only 30%. Whatever the case, a horrific amount of death occurred, and it killed healthy people too. So it's not very realistic, but neither is having all these children and not having any of the children die, right? The infant mortality was astonishingly high, and in Bannerlord, nobody dies. The children never get sick. Well, are you serious? Arwa is pregnant again. Wow. You know, we're not running any mods to increase it, fellas. I'm going to go ahead and say that having Viral on both Wazu and his wife is increasing the fertility. The guys, I'm sure the guys are saying, no, you're wrong. It doesn't stack. That's okay. We're going to role play then. If it officially doesn't stack, this will be six kids. I'm actually losing track of how many kids Wazu's had so far. We are starting to hemorrhage food to the point where the city is under duress, right? Potentially under duress. We're not at war with anybody. I was going to dump some food on the city, but I don't have to now, right? We can just sit here in peace, and eventually those villages will recover, and I think the food will recover as well. And if not, we will dump some bread on the peasants. All right. What else? What if Wazu lives, right? I've thought about this scenario. What if we get to 15 years from now and Wazu's just, walking around with creaky knees and gray hair and a gray beard? We're going to roll with it. He's still going to lead our command, and I will role play some element of disgruntled, power-hungry kids, hoping the old geezer dies off. Of course, that was the thing all the time in the medieval era. You'd get an ambitious son who was highly interested in their parents going the fuck away. And obviously, everything from poison to treachery occurred when people wanted to seize power, right? We've all sort of heard of anecdotal stories, and there were plenty of incidences in history where that occurred. Most of the time, it was just a father clearly aging to the point of senility. Senility, is that the word? When they get fucking stupid and they lose their memory. And by the way, you can see my companions are running around. That's actually fine. I don't mind them running around getting EXP and helping armies defend. I think I have to pay for them no matter what. If they're out there, they're on the payroll, so to speak. Look at, I don't know if you saw that blip. Arwa wins the tournament. She's pregnant. And she's smashing people with her big belly, I guess, in the tournament. And it's amazing. She's making us gold and cranking out children. I have a spectacular wife in real life. But Arwa's not far behind, right? Like, she's an amazing Bannerlord wife. I'm going to try to think of how many more minutes I want to do. We've already passed a full year. I think we will try to take it through much of this second year here, and I can talk about a few more elements. So I'm not going to, like, try to kill Wazu off. If he dies before the campaign starts, I will show you that process, and I will show you the heir, right? There will be a new heir to the family. There's always a chance that there's a, what do they call an interregnum? Or no, I guess in this case it would be a regent. A regent is usually a woman. They refuse to call her a king or a queen. They were, not really allowed to have the title of power. They were always just placeholders for the kids. The kids would be growing up, whether it was Louis the 15th, or Louis the 15th. He had a regent for like 10 years in France in the early 1700s. There was always some woman in charge, but she was only nominally in charge, right? It was her advisors usually trying to sway her, and her trying to do everything she could to protect power for her future king. It'll be interesting to see what happens, right? There's a little random element. In fact, there's a major random element to all this. Everything from the pregnancies to what our dipshit ally does here, to Wazu catching scurvy or some other horrific shit, right? You don't eat enough oranges and you get killed, and that's that. So sort of the back and forth. Like I said, it wasn't going to be too thrilling. That's the kid, right? Another kid. So that was the kid being born. That's the 6th, I think. Let's take a look at this shit. Mahayil. It sounds like a female, though I can't really be sure. Okay. So indeed, we have 6 kids now. Yeah, so cruising right along. Wazu's got lots of progeny. Again, you can say what you want about the virile things not stacking. The evidence here seems to suggest, and maybe everybody has lots and lots of kids, but lately when I play Bannerlord, and I mean the last couple 3 campaigns, the parents are unbelievably fertile. I meant to mention that earlier on, and here I'm just adding food because I don't want our city getting besieged and starving. You can just dump food on the populace and that food number will go way up again. We're keeping Wazu a nice, chunk of food so that his troops don't starve. But the fertility of early Bannerlord was way lower than this, at least in my experience. And maybe I didn't have the right perks or something. I know you also had to have proximity to your wife. They had to be like directly in your party or in the city, and you're sitting there in the city, right? Simulating that you had to obviously have proximity to your wife when they get pregnant. Now in Bannerlord, I'm pretty sure, at least with one of the updates, you can literally be on the other side of the map and your wife will get pregnant. Which is a touch suspicious, a little suspicious, right? We've got jokes for the Navy guys at the base near where I work, and the joke is, all these Navy guys, and I apologize, it's just a crass joke. It's, I'm not trying to offend anybody, although, we don't worry too much about offending guys. This is a fucking joke. That these guys come back from an 8-month cruise on their aircraft carrier, and all their wives are 4 months pregnant, and they're like, hey, babe, hey, I'm doing the math. I'm not a brilliant fellow. I'm a Navy guy, but I'm not quite certain. This makes a lot of sense. We need to maybe have a therapist talk to me a little bit here. All right, so Morania, they look like they retook Morania Castle, and they're not going to vote it for me, probably. Look at Wahan the Golden is in here helping. It's good, right? Our companions are doing some proactive shit while Wazu sits on his ass. All right, so I think this is sufficient to show you this process. I'm looking down. This is almost 30 minutes now. Now I haven't been holding the control and the space bar consistently to do the 16x speed, so I can probably do the next 12 to 15 years much faster than this, just by focusing on letting the time lapse go. And the other thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do chores today. I'm at home. My wife is home on a Sunday. And I'm going to help her with housework while this campaign just whirs in the background, and I'll check it out every once in a while. So just wandering around here to give you kind of one last status check before you guys get majorly time warped. The Botanians are definitely making a comeback here. In fact, they're reinvading former Botanian territory and pushing the Vlandians back. The Western Empire seems like they're trying to become the Northern Empire, biting into Sturgia up there. And then the middle of the map, as it often is total chaos, right? The Southern Empire, the Northern Empire, even the Khazate, all in a big maelstrom fighting around Amitatis. And the Aserai at least are holding their own. They're not doing great, but I see three different armies down there. And Wazu obviously still holding Danustica. So again, I'm showing you this map. I'll probably show you this 2, 3, maybe even 4 times more in this episode. I do recognize this is not going to be the most exciting episode for fellas, but for those guys sort of interested in the lore of a campaign, if you can have lore for a personal campaign, this is as close to it as you're going to get for our campaign. We're going to essentially show this process, and if leaders die, if Caladog dies of old age and stuff like that, I will try to point it out. I missed it earlier. Dirthert was killed in battle, so he died almost immediately in this campaign. I've only mentioned that a couple times in these episodes, but mostly because I don't find it to be that material. And I think that's good. I think that's good. The next time you see me, there'll probably be a little blip. I'll do a little editing, and we will be years into the future. And we're back, a little time warp here, and if you're confused, so am I. I was actually doing some just housework, came back to this. Talk about Bizarro World. Probably the least likely thing I would have possibly expected at this stage of the campaign. It was the year 1096. This is after narration. I should just clarify that. What I did here is I did some fancy editing so that you guys don't have to watch the whole event, but look at this shit. I mean, Botania was starting to have a little resurgence when I left, and now they have 16,000 on the little power bar. They're twice as much as the Aserai. And of course, the Aserai decided, hey, let's fight everybody. So eventually I did hold a siege defense here of Botania. It was actually kind of a nice break from just watching the clock go round and round on the timer. I recruited a bunch of prisoners, upgraded a bunch of troops, and then took the battlefield with Wazu and company inside Danustica. I was very perplexed the whole time why they were here, but you will see in a moment, once I recap what had happened in the previous 6 years, why the fuck they were even there in the first place. Now, I also thought this siege was just going to be a complete blowout. Like I said, I did consider just auto-resolving it, but I was concerned that Wazu and his folks would get captured and would be a total disaster. So right away, they killed my horse. This is just a little bit of editing, right? They were lobbing trebuchet rounds at me, and instead they killed my horse. So they pissed off Wazu from the get-go. Then they throw 1,000,000 javelins at like every location I was defending, and it actually looked really rough at one point. Wazu was getting chased down and getting his ass kicked before we took a little defensive structure, right? We're like, okay, shit. I guess we'll send some infantry up here. Eventually, we were able to commandeer this catapult and do our normal raining down of death on the Botanian forces. But one of the things I learned from this little intermission siege defense here, and I recognize this removes some of the excitement of the siege. Honestly, this should not be that exciting of a siege compared to what we're going to see in the future, is that it showed me that Danustica is not a good location for defense, right? I struggled mightily to defend this city, even with 1,100, 1,200 troops and strong troops at that. And it came down to the last 200 or so on 200. We got a couple kill box situations set up and victory was achieved. Now, ultimately, I was thankful for this because it sort of broke the monotony of just watching the clock turn. It's really interesting to see the twists and turns of the campaign. And of course, we took full advantage of it, right? Not only did we get a bunch of EXP, we got a bunch of troops that we threw into our into our dungeons. Of course, I could have just taken all these guys, but I didn't want to take forever, just sort of hand-picking a handful of their troops that I wanted for the future, right? If they're going to kill my troops, we're at least going to clasp some of these fucks in irons and turn them into future Wazu mercenaries or Wazu murderers, right? We recruit all these prisoners. And then, of course, it's nice they dumped a bunch of loot on us. course, you're always hoping against Britannia you get a Falx, right? You can get a legendary Falx from Britannia because the loot you get is sort of loosely based on the culture. If you're fighting against the Khazad, obviously you're hoping for masterwork and legendary glaives and whatnot, and elite armor. Against Britannians, it's Falxes. You might even get like a masterwork noble bow. And then this happened. Before I could even get food into the garrison and get the troops healed, the Northern Empire, or the Southern Empire rather, decided they were opportunistically going to attack. I watched with fascination from inside the walls. Wazu, of course, was eating the entire time. I wish I had some snacks, actually. It could simulate Wazu eating. Of course, you guys probably don't want to listen to me just talking with my mouth full, so we'll skip that part. But fortunately, our allies came to the rescue here and beat off this Southern Empire assault. All right, so I didn't expect even to include that portion there, but it was really interesting. First, that Britannia was down there and they decided to siege, and then ultimately it was harder to defend than I thought. What that tells me is that Danustica is not going to be an optimal capital city. Very beautiful, not the easiest to defend. Now, that won't mean that I'll improve my defenses on it. Probably repeated sieges and defenses of it coming up will make us better at defending it, but it wasn't terrific. So we dumped a bunch of food and bread and fish and whatnot on the populace because, of course, if you have starving troops, your garrison, it's like they're not there. They're all pouting because they don't have food. And ultimately, we were able to restore law and order and troops and whatnot. So at this stage, 1096, the Aserai is at war with these three kingdoms. That doesn't really matter that much. But look at the power bar, right? The Western Empire is strong. I'm doing this to show you this part. The Valandians are incredibly strong, right? Even though for some reason or other, these guys have all the cities and all the towns, and they're paying us tribute. Go ahead and explain that one. Everybody knows the diplomatic system, the diplomacy system in Bannerlord is, we'll call it suboptimal. Right, it's not terrific. Nevertheless, I'm not going to use the diplomacy mod. A lot of people think that it's too easy, so we're just going to roll with vanilla. And of course, a lot of people play vanilla. Here's your overview, right? So Sturge is doing well. Valandi is obviously doing exceedingly well, tearing in. Now look at Britannia. They have these castles, or cities rather, all over the place. Epicrotia, Lagetta. They don't own any of their originals. The Britannians are ripping it up in the south. And then you have Mysia here is also Britannia. That's probably why they sent an army to attack me, I guess. Their kingdom is totally bifurcated. The Northern Empire and the Western Empire are kind of a mess, and Khazad is doing well also. And obviously, definitely need to cover this part again here. I apologize, it's kind of herky-jerky, but a little update just on the clan, right? Wazu is now 52, so he is now potentially mortal. His wife is getting up there in age. Look at this, though. She has done her job and then some, right? 9 children, including some of them that are now starting to come of age, or at least starting to become icons down there. That means they're 10 years old and whatnot. Now, her father died, right? So, unfortunately, I realized we can't track his stats. He was doing pretty well with the Strength and AI mod. However, Gyarios is still alive, and look at his stats, right? This guy is now becoming a beast, right? His steward skills getting up there, definitely moving right along. I'm not going to cover every leader, but just kind of click on a few. Caladog is already a beast in the game, and he's getting extremely powerful. Again, that Strength and AI mod is definitely doing its job. So our kingdom here obviously is down to just Danustica, and I say obviously, maybe you can't really tell that. We're basically surrounded by enemies, even though at times we're only at war with 1 or 2 kingdoms. Sometimes it's 3 or 4, and we're just trying to hold out here in Danustica. You can picture Wazu eating everything in sight while there's war raging all over the frontier, and Arwa's saying, hey, let's go to war, and he's like, I got food, I got money, I don't need to go to war. I'm content right here. So just a little bit of enrichment to the storyline there, and just a status update again before this next time warp. All right, so another brief time warp here, and again, you'll come back in 5 or 6 years. I do recognize that this is going to be an episode that some people are annoyed with, or even leaving inflammatory comments with. I tried to make sure that in the title of this episode on YouTube and whatnot, that you guys are it's plentiful clear that this is sort of just enrichment to the story. This is not a true campaign video where we're running around and attacking people and selling loot and stuff like that. This is sort of like that slow part of a movie where you set the backdrop. So I better say here, so on to the next little time warp here, right? When I come back, it'll probably be after the year 1100, right? gonna mark the spot here as we turn to the year 1100, right? We flip over the calendar and a new century begins in this campaign. It's been 4 or 5 years since the last time warp that I narrated. I've been in and out, sort of checking in on things, and there hasn't actually been a whole lot of dramatic things that have gone on. Surprise, surprise. Wazu is still kicking. He's starting to look like an old fella here. You can almost see the white in his beard and his hair, his copious hair. They don't have any Just for Men back then or whatever it's fucking called. 55 years old and he's still kicking. And of course his stats for the most part have stagnated. Now his family is enormous, right? Our incredible wife here, 10 children this gal has made, which is, I mean, what can you say other than you tip your cap? Now, of course, in the real medieval era, most of them would have died. So again, still dealing with Valandia. Khazate actually has a pretty sizable force, and the Aserai here really are being hemmed in. I think, in fact, Razi is the only city they have. So it looks grim, and Valandia has this vast mega territory. They're certainly close to global hegemony at this stage. Britannia is recarving out a realm. It's kind of interesting. They've been shoved to the east by the Valandians. In the center, it's a maelstrom. It's all kinds of different kingdoms. And Sturge's holding their own. And how can I show you this? I want to show you, this will be perfect, diplomacy. Most of the leaders are still alive, like Regea, there she is, right? And they're doing quite well. 16,000 total strength, or whatever that means. The Aserai have two armies. One of the armies is large, though, so the Aserai are hardly dead. Northern Empire is doing well. Lucan is dead, though. It looks like he died. Monchug is still with us. I was looking, and almost all of them are still with us. Garios is still alive. Look at his stats, too. I've been kind of checking in on him because he was one of our original markers for this strength and AI, right? 312 Steward and a bunch of other skills approaching 270. He's turning into quite the warlord. We still have Caladog, right? And Britannia is no slouch in this campaign. And there's Yorig. He must have taken over from Ragnavad or whatever. Finally, there's Erdurand with a massive Valandian empire. I mean, they just have a quarter, maybe even half of the map conquered. So Danustica is holding out. We've had 2 more sieges here that I auto-resolved, and we were able to fuck up our enemies. But it's looking pretty grim here for the Aserai. Another 4 or 5 years of this time warp. It's been very interesting for me to watch. Of course, I haven't been just sitting staring at the screen for hours. It takes about 10 minutes to do a year's worth, right? So it would be literally 3 hours of staring at the screen. But I continue to sort of bounce back and forth between some projects. I'm working at home, doing the laundry, and making sure I don't come in that says Wazu has died. You need a new ruler. We'll see if he makes it another 5 years. We'll see if he makes it to the point where he sees his children coming of age. Arwa is, I think, 38, 37. She's holding on. Of course, at this stage, she's unlikely to make more children, but that is, 10 children. What more could you ask for from this superstar wife of ours, this devious superstar wife? So I think that is sufficient. I'll give you maybe one last overview, and we will continue on. Again, the next time you see this game, it will probably be near the end phase. In other words, where we're ready to pick up and venture into a whole new campaign. All right, so I now want to add some other enrichment to this story here, right? This story is going to be a little bit contrived. I'm going to work a little bit behind the scenes to make this campaign a bit more interesting, the story a bit more interesting. And I'm now going to talk about Wazu's 2 oldest children, right? They are both sisters. Now, this is Ruwa. Her older sister is Mata, and Mata is a very simple, obsequious, polite, gentle woman. However, Ruwa is a savage, right? She's a warrior. She's very aggressive. She's insolent and rude to other people, including to Wazu, and that storyline is going to affect this campaign, as you will see down the road. Now, this also occurred. I wanted just to show you this process. Our city of Danustica was attacked by a gigantic force of Khazate, and I'm going to say Wazu had enough. In fact, the Khazate were attacking us at multiple locations, so Wazu left Danustica, but he didn't abandon it. He simply left it and called all of the Aserai nobles from the entire kingdom into a gigantic army, and then he destroyed both this smaller Khazate force that was sieging a castle, and then he demolished Monchug and this other force outside Danustica, right? Wazu finally takes a little bit of action here in the year 1103. Unfortunately, though, after gathering this massive army, almost larger than anybody had ever seen in Calradia, Wazu went back to sitting on his ass, eating food, and the nobles obviously dispersed. This part I'm definitely not going to show for all the children, but the first one that seemed appropriate. In this year, 1104, Mata reached her coming of age, right? She, 18 years old, is ready to join the clan, and Wazu, like any protective father, especially a 7'2", 400-pound protective father, was beating back the other vassal lords, immediately offering themselves for her hand, right? Trying in marriage. Wazu was having none of that. Mata was the daughter that he loved the most. Of course, that's often the case with firstborn girls, and Wazu loved Mata. He loved how polite and gentle she was, and obsequious, right? She basically is one of those daughters who always did what they were told. By the dry season of 1104, the seneschal of Danustica again informed Wazu that the food stocks and his household financial situation were dire, and strongly urged him to cut back on feasts. Loving food, Wazu was reduced to selling off precious armor and swords at foreign towns to raise funds, and Wazu even stooped to assigning companions quests so that he could continue eating his customary 8 meals a day. Wazu even dusted off his own war gear and fought in a few tournaments, hoping to return in short order to a life of gluttony and sloth. Wazu's children looked on with mixed emotions, ranging from concern, depression, fury, even despair, as Wazu ate his once proud household into a state of debauchery. As war raged all around Danustica, Wazu once again refused counsel that he take up the command and support the Aserai in their wars. The spirits of the household rose with the ascendance of Wazu's second daughter, Ruwa. Coming of age, this fiery sword maiden of noble lineage reminded people strongly of both Wazu with his reckless courage, but also her mother Arwa, with a cruel and deceitful side that frightened her tutors and scared away potential suitors. The years slowly slipped away, and the Aserai seemed doomed as a disunited kingdom, but chaotic events would soon shake every part of the realm to its core. Alright, well, so welcome to the future, or more accurately, where this campaign is going to start at the present, right? Wazu is now an old guy here. He is in his upper 50s, actually 61 years old. So he is going to be transferring power at some point. He's obviously going to get sick and die. There's an RNG element to this, right? Now, Wazu is still a powerful leader, but his children, especially Ruwa, is chomping at the bit to take over power in this campaign, right? In this kingdom. These children of his has watched him just eat away the family inheritance, eat away the family name, sitting in Danustica like a coward. And a lot of them are ready for glory. They're full of youth and zeal, and they want battle, right? So Wazu right now is sitting on an army of 600. We were actually positive in a lot of different metrics, surprisingly. Now, Danustica survived all those years of siege. It was never taken. Even though we fled once and gathered a huge army, all the projects are finished. Arwa's done an amazing job. And in fact, I kind of fucked this up here. The reserve, there's 170,000 just sitting in there, and I don't think that'll ever be used unless the city is sacked and damaged. Of course, we're going to start training militia. The children are very much warmongering children. Compared to Wazu, and they are already influencing the old fella to develop an army and go out and start to help again the Aserai kingdom. We've got a large garrison here and a good-sized army, but this is the only city we have. Now, a little irregularity. We tried out a little bit of caravan action here. I'm not entirely a caravan expert by any means, but just to make some extra money, Wazu has some of his companions out there riding around on a donkey trying to sell some spices and shit like that. So an overview here of the map. Of course, I owe you this, guys. If you've watched to this point of this episode, I will probably include this also at the beginning of the next episode. A lot has changed, right? Battania has been pushed to the east. Ironically, the Western Empire still kind of has their original holdings. It's been back and forth. Sturgia in the north is pretty strong. The Khazate are being crimped in on by Sturgia and the Northern Empire, and I want to mention this. This is really interesting because I find this castle to be one of the best castles to defend in the game. The Northern Empire was down to only Jogurus Castle at one point. They had only one castle and no cities, and they have recovered. They even have a castle down here deep in Aserai territory for some reason. So it's ironically, none of the kingdoms are gone, right? The Khazate, in fact, just took Sibir in the middle of Sturgian territory. Not quite sure why they went all the way there. But apart from Valandia expanding massively to the west, a lot of the map is relatively... well, in the south, of course, is messy too. Look at this shit, actually. The Southern Empire has 2 cities down here and a castle or 2, as well as the Valandians. So the south is a big mess, right? Aserai territory. The Aserai are definitely being crimped in on, but they're by no means weak too, right? And this is the effect of the strength in AI. Look at this shit. They have 3 armies. Big armies too, right? And this is going to be one of the interesting themes about this campaign. Of course, Wazu has his own army, but these other kingdoms are as strong as the Aserai, or in many cases stronger. Now we're at war with Sturgia, Khazate, and the Western Empire, but you know how this works. This changes week to week. I mean, look at the Khazate here. The Khazate are actually really strong, even though they only have like 4 or 5 cities. Now let's show you a few of these princes or whatever, kings. Even this dipshit here, he looks like a total dipshit. I mean, talk about a birth control haircut there. Monchug is still alive, right? And let's look at some of these guys' stats, right? 21,000 on the strength of the Khazate. These guys are ripping it up. Wait, let's go back and show you Monchug first. So this is one thing I want to point out. I have not done anything to create this, done anything, I haven't used the console or anything like that. For some reason, not all, but almost all of the kings and queens out there seem to have abnormally large steward skill, right? 330 is the normal hard cap. For some reason, they have leveled right on past that. Of course, the rest of their skills are increased significantly by the strength and AI mod, but I don't know how they're exceeding their 330 cap. Lucan died. I tried to mention that earlier in this episode. Caladog, however, is still alive, right? And his stats are ripping, right? Now, he still has a sort of normal steward skill, even though it's high. But obviously... still alive, still kicking, and so is Regea, right? Look at this too. She's paying us tribute, even though, and actually, let's focus on that tribute again. Look at all 4 of these kingdoms are paying us money. The Aserai are actually starting to get rich, while these countries pay them money, or at least get stable. And again, Regea. Now look at this, 446 steward skill. That's crazy, right? She even has 285 medicine skill. That means that she's going to have a huge army, or at least be capable of fielding a huge army. And they have the benefits of the medicine skill, her leadership, etc. Let's take a look at her daughter, Ira. Well, her stats are good, but she's sort of unexemplary. And then there's this dipshit here, Erdurant. He has a huge, powerful empire, and again, they're paying us tribute. It might be the fact that all these lords have so much money that while they're busy fighting their wars against other people, they can pay us off. And his stats actually, out of all of them, look the worst, and maybe that's why he looks sad. His stats are not great. So things have definitely advanced, right? At this stage of the kingdom, most of the nobles out there have very good stats, if not insanely good stats, right? I don't know how they're getting this extra steward skill. If somebody has an idea why that's happening, maybe they can tune in. So our goal here is probably to start expanding the Aserai kingdom again, right? The children effectively we're role-playing are leaning on Wazu. He's getting up with his creaky knees, and they're saying, look, we don't have enough cities for all of us. We all want our own castles and cities to defend. You're too old. You're going to have to let us fight a little bit, right? And Wazu's sort of interested in seeing his children put on some armor and actually go out there and sort of relive his glory days. So that's the next step. This episode, of course, at this stage has run over an hour, so I'm going to wrap it up. But interesting things are soon to come, right? I definitely have a storyline in mind. We're going to play around a little bit with some cutscenes. And Wazu and his small little family here are about to venture out into a very gnarly world. So, of course, if you want to see more, you want to subscribe, friends. I appreciate you guys. It's going to get interesting. And I will see you guys next time.